hang on to your hide. That's exactly what we need to tell our elected officials, our senators and representatives in Washington, D.C. to do right now. In case you haven't been paying attention, there's been a little bit of discussion about passing bills that cost a lot of money, like trillions of dollars that we don't have in Washington, D.C., or I guess the lack of passage of these bills. But one bill has just recently passed the House of Representatives. It's making its way over to the Senate. There's going to be a conference committee. That's the infrastructure bill. It's $1.2 trillion. It's not what AOC and the other socialists wanted to pass. They have this whole $3 to $5 trillion plan that hasn't gotten passed yet, thanks because of pro-life people like Joe Manchin, mostly pro-life people like Senator Joe Manchin. But this infrastructure bill is kind of a big deal. And you might be thinking, why the heck is Kristen talking to me about an infrastructure deal? This is supposed to be the Explicitly Pro-Life podcast. Stick on the subject, Kristen. It is actually on the subject because the thing you haven't heard about, the thing you may not know about, is that this infrastructure bill was passed the House of Representatives with 13 Republicans, some pro-lifers, voting for the bill. But it doesn't include the Hyde Amendment in it. And we've talked a lot about the Hyde Amendment in Students for Life recently. We've done a lot of social media graphics. There's a lot of things clever, like things you can say, like how I started out this little podcast with that little quip about Hyde. But the summary of Hyde is that it's named after Congressman Henry Hyde. It was first handed down and passed in, I think, 1976. And it has, since that time, prohibited federal taxpayer dollars from funding abortions, except in cases of rape, incest, or to protect the life of a mother. This is what we believe one of the most consequential pieces of, it's not really legislation, it's an amendment that have ever come out of Washington, D.C. in terms of abortion. Social scientists like Dr. Michael Newt, Charlotte Lozier, and others have estimated that this, by not allowing federal taxpayer funds to fund abortion, it's probably saved about 2 million lives. Now, this doesn't mean that you're not funding abortion, because, if you live in California, Illinois, a radical abortion state, your state could be forcing you to fund abortions. And also, we all know we taxpayers fund Planned Parenthood to the tune of $600 million, and all money is fungible. So even though we may not be paying for the 15 minutes the abortionist is stopping the beating heart of a child, we're certainly paying rent and electricity for the building. So there are definitely ways we are involved and now morally culpable here, I would argue. But this $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill that was passed did not include the Hyde Amendment. And some people have said, well, this isn't necessary. This is a bill about bridges and roads. We don't need to stop Planned Parenthood from getting funding because they're not going to get funding. This is, I think, poor foresight, because if you know anything about Planned Parenthood and the abortion industry, is that they will weasel their way into any piece of legislation, any bill that gets passed that hands out free cash. That's literally what they do. And they've done it time and time again. And please do not doubt the pro-abortion Democrats' rigor when it comes to funding the abortion industry in the United States. They will literally put abortion funding in so many bills that have nothing to do with abortion or, quote unquote, reproductive rights. I think back to 2016, before the election in 2016, there was a big fight in Washington, D.C. to pass a bill for Zika, to prevent the transmission of Zika, to educate women and families about Zika, because it's very bad for a woman who's pregnant to have contract the Zika virus. Planned Parenthood got their hands on that, and they got federal funding to prevent Zika and to help women who are pregnant with Zika, i.e. they were telling them to have abortions. So we can look back at that, and I'm sure there's a lot of other examples. This was just the most recent one that came to my mind. So we need to keep Hyde protections. We know Hyde has saved 2 million lives. Hyde saves lives. So how to win this week? Remind your legislators, your 2 U.S. senators, your House of Representatives member, that whenever they cast a vote about spending any of our taxpayer dollars, it better damn well include the Hyde Amendment, or they're going to be hearing from you.